then, back then, back then, back then. Back then, back then, back then, back then, back then, back then it was a bus pass, but I'm riding smooth now. Back then we wasn't in tune, but I'm in tune now. Tuned in to the real, too real for the drama, too real to entertain. Bullshit without no commas. Back then, man, they didn't want me, now I'm burning up and now they all on me. Back then, man, they didn't want me, that's that fake love, you can keep it from me. Back then, I had some screws loose, had to tighten up just to get a clue. But that was way, way, way back then. That was way back then. Took some time, I had to find myself. All I need is me, that's nobody else. 2020 made the vision clear. When you take a risk, you gon' see rewards. I'm a young boss, a nigga been trill, but being real don't come with awards. Had $1 in a dream and 100 core. Now I'm next to Big Sean on the billboards. Back then, back then, back then, back then, back then, back then. Back then, back then, back then, back then, back then, back then. Back then, back then, back then, back then, back then, back then. Back then, back then, back then, back then, back then, back. Mama said back then, when we in the store but don't touch nothing. Back then I had no experience, so a nigga had to go and make some. Back then I was seeking validation, now a nigga I just get it. I ain't being passive, I ain't playing timid. This is game 7, this is not a scrimmage. Now I'm putting on a whole crew, had to level up like I'm Goku. But it's not about what you go through, but more about what you grow through. If you learn from it, no, you never lose. Always choose yourself if you gotta choose. When you got the light, you gotta be the fuse. When you live your dreams, you don't look to snooze. Took some time, I had to find myself. All I need is me, that's nobody else. 2020 made the vision clear. When you take a risk, you gon' see rewards. I'm a young boss, a nigga been trill, but being real don't come with awards. Had $1 in a dream and 100 core. Now I'm next to J. Cole on the billboards. Back then, back then, back then, back then, back then, back then.